most of you know who I am. I'm Ralph Viscomi. Brad asked me to do the demo tonight, and what I'm going to show you guys is how I do a bunch of the embellishments I do. Does everybody know what an embellishment is? Anybody know what an embellishment is? That's close. Actually, it's defined as something that you do to a piece or a person to make them look better. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anybody to do any more embellishing than me. They said it wasn't going to do any good. But people have been embellishing on wood for ages. And I have my notes. There's a lot of ways to embellish, and I think just about everybody here has done some form of embellishment to a piece before. From coloring using dyes, and Carolyn has one out there now that she just did, to carving either by hand or using power tools. And those of you who have been long-term members of the club, you remember a gentleman by the name of Frank White, who was great at embellishing pieces, and he did everything pretty much by hand. And doing things in a round by hand is quite an art. I tried it. It didn't come out pretty. The other thing that people do is they emboss or cut on wood, like using the spiral tools by Sorby, or using knurling tools to make orange peel effect on the edge of a wood, or pyrography, which is wood burning. Other ways of doing it is doing inlays, as well as using different colored woods. You could classify segmentation as embellishing wood. So one of the questions people always say is, well, when do you embellish? I know a lot of people say, and I tend to agree with them, that you like to leave the piece of wood speak for itself. And that's absolutely true. I mean, this piece here, I was going to embellish it when it was just a piece of maple. But when I turned the outside of it, I saw it had this flame figure in it. And I said, I'm not going to embellish this, because it looks great the way it is without doing anything to it. So the only thing I did was I turned a few beads on the outside to make it a little dressier. But I would not carve this. I may dye it, but I think this speaks to itself. And I think this is one of the things that draws a lot of us to turning to begin with. It's like, if those of you have seen, boy, I hate getting all stuck sometimes. Famous saying by Tom Hanks, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to find inside. And wood turning is the same way. How many times you get a piece of wood, and when you get the rough form of it, it looks like yuck. And then you turn it, it's got this beautiful flame figure, or bird's eye, and stuff like that. It's just great. So all embellishing is taking pieces that are plain, like this is a plain piece of maple, and when I turned it, it's a nice shape, but I wanted to dress it up. So this is simple. I just burned some squares, made some designs on it, and then I used India ink pens and I colored it in. And that's a simple form of embellishing. Or another one was I turned this piece of ginkgo, that is a piece of arboretum wood, by the way, and it had this natural void in it. And when I turned it, it was originally just natural on the inside, and I had it on the shelf, and I put it on the shelf before I finished it. I wanted to see what it looked like, and it just didn't stand out. It just looked like a piece. So I said, well, maybe I should do something to the inside to darken it so this piece really comes prominent. So I used a pyrography pen, and I burned probably about 50,000 little holes in here to make the stippling effect. And it looks a lot nicer on the shelf now because it does stand out more. So the primary times that you want to embellish things is to either highlight a grain figure. There's times where I might have a piece where it has a flame like this on one side and the other side doesn't look so hot. So I may do something just on the other side. Or I'll leave it alone, like this one. Or if you have a defect in the wood, and Michael was just talking about a few minutes ago, is if there's a nice piece of wood that you have and it has a huge crack in it, well, it's epoxy. And Carolyn did a demo a number of months ago where she filled cracks with colored epoxy and then turned the wood. That's an embellishment. Um, or if you had, like I just said, jazz up a piece of plain wood, or whenever an idea hits you. And if you go look on the internet now, there are tons of people who are doing embellishing work, and you can get a lot of great ideas to do it. Some of the things that you want to keep, if you do embellishing, there's some things you want to keep in mind when you are embellishing. One thing is if you're going to embellish a bowl, we always talk about design considerations where you want the piece to be lifted up off the wood. You don't want a dog bowl that just sits and plops down on the surface below it. If you're going to embellish a piece of wood, especially the outside of a bowl, you want to make sure that it's lifted up, so you make a taller foot so that the piece sits up above the table like that, and you can really appreciate the embellishment that you do. And if you look at a number of the basket weave illusion bowls I do, and lucky you get to see me again in October because I'm going to show how I make the basket weave bowls. They're all lifted up. They all have higher feet, or is it still a foot? But they all have a higher foot. So that you could really appreciate the way the design, because you worked your fannies off to put that design on there. So you want people to enjoy it. The other thing that some people do, and I don't do this, but I know a number of people who do, is they embellish the entire piece and they actually hide that it's a piece of wood. They'll carve on the outside, they'll paint on the inside, so to a lot of people will pick it up and they'll think it's pottery, when it's really not. It's a piece of wood. I personally like having some part of the wood show so people know it's a piece of wood. Like tonight I'm going to show you how I do those radial carvings on a bowl, and I'll leave the rest of the wood natural, and it's just really the rim that gets embellished. But as far as ideas go, and I've seen a lot of people say they're not artistic. I mean, I'm not particularly artistic either. You get a lot of great ideas and a lot of techniques by looking on the internet. Matter of fact, the AW, I know, Reed, you were at the symposium this year, weren't you? They had a number of demonstrators who showed embellishments, and I did. Yeah, I signed up for the virtual, so I got to see a bunch of the videos, like Jacques Vessery and a couple of the people. And there was this young lady who I don't remember her name, and she is known for carving leaves like this on wood, and she does them on bowls. So I figured, let me try it on a small piece. Oh yeah, the camera up top. There it is. And I'm no artist, but she showed an easy way to do this, and I'll show you in a minute how she did it. And you can actually do it, and all it is drawing a curved line down the bowl. So you can learn a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people out there that you can learn from, and I've gotten a lot of my ideas from reading the articles in the AW, as well as looking at a lot of the videos that are available out there. Now, the techniques I primarily use, simply because pyrography, I've been doing pyrography for a number of years, so I knew how to use a wood burner. I've done a lot of it. I actually carved in a prior life, not professionally. So I knew carving. And actually, I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I used to do watercolors when I was younger. Not as young as kindergarten, but after that as well. So those are basically the three types of embellishments that I do. The tools that I use, the wood burner I have is a Burnmaster. That is Burnmaster and Razor Tip are probably the best ones out there. If you're going to do any type of wood burning, you want a tool that is strong enough to have a rapid heat recovery rate. When you touch a piece of wood with a pen, a wood burning pen, you'll notice that it immediately starts to lose heat because the heat is going into the wood as it burns. So if you have a slower recovery rate, you burn a line, then you got to wait. Then you can burn another line, you got to wait. And if you're doing a lot of that, it's time consuming. So you want something that recovers. That unit right there that has a dual port and a bunch of pens and a bunch of tips costs about $300, and they're really good units. You can, as you get better at it, you can actually make your own tips. Tips cost anywhere from $10 to $15 a piece. You can make them yourself. All you need is nichrome 60 wire, and you can fashion it into a whole bunch of different shapes. The rotary carver I use is this is a master carver. It goes from 0 to about, if it turns on, to about 45,000 RPM. So this thing can really do some serious carving on it for you. When I started out with a Dremel, and then I moved up to a Fordham, which are both, well, the Dremel, you know what they look like. They're just bigger versions of this. And the Fordham tool is a motor with a wire that comes down, not even a wire, it's a rotating, I'm sorry, yeah, thank you, flexible shaft. Told you. Flexible shaft device, and it has a handpiece that's similar to this, but that flexible shaft doesn't move very well. It's a pain. I can't tell you how many times I've bent it, so I had to get a new shaft. So it's hands down the best if you're going to hog a lot of wood because it has a lot of torque. But if you're going for fine details, it's not very good. These things, they don't have the torque that a Dremel or a Fordham will, but you can get details off of this thing, and it's, with the exception of this bit that I'm going to use on this thing, this bit I need to use two hands. But most of the burrs I use, I can do it with one hand, and I'll show that in a minute. Burrs, I have a ton of burrs. They make them all different sizes, all different shapes, all different uses, from stump cutters to the cuts-all burrs that are really rough cutting burrs, to really tiny little things that I need a magnifying glass to see what I'm doing when I do it. They also have diamond tip. It's diamond dust or ruby dust, and you always hear a lot of complaints. The diamond bits don't cut. They're not supposed to cut. Diamond bits are used for finishing, like sandpaper. They actually use them first, then I go to sandpaper. But they're not really cutting burrs. They're more smoothing and finishing burrs. And the last thing I want to talk about when I'm talking about tools is safety. You have to have a respirator or a dust collector. When I carve at home, I have a carving station with a hole drilled in it that'll hold this. This is a trimp brush carving stand, and you know, it moves. It's great for positioning pieces around as you work on them. But on my station, I have one of those big gulp hoods, and I have a plexiglass hood that I've built over it, so I don't need to wear a face shield. But once I have it hooked up to my Laguna dust collector, it just sucks everything out, all the dust that's generated by this. Obviously, safety glasses and a shield, and for us younger folks, magnifying glasses help, because after looking at one of these things for about half an hour, you get up and everything else is blurry. You can't see 2 feet in front of you. And bright task lighting, and I'm not talking about this kind of lights, I'm talking about the bright task lighting that's right on the piece, especially if you're going to be using small burrs and trying to do detailed work. And finally, one of the most high-tech tools I use is this guy. When you do a lot of these pieces and you're cutting with a burr, it's going to create fuzzies. These things are great. I'm going to put on here, put this thing on it while it's turning like about 600-700 RPM, and it just gets rid of all the fuzzies for you. So it's a great little thing to have. So the other thing that, if we get time, I'll show you is how I color them. This piece is obviously I carved it with this guy, and this has about 7 coats of acrylic paint on it, starting from very dark to lighter until the top piece is like a whitish blue. So I use a lot of acrylics to do coloring like this. Sometimes, like I said here, and on my basket weaves, I'll use India ink pens. When I first started, I tried using alcohol pens, and Copic makes a good alcohol pen. But the problem I had with Copic or any alcohol pen is when you went to put finish on it, if you didn't spray it and you wiped it, it reactivates and it'll make a hell of a smear. And that's the last thing you want after you've been working on this stuff. And the last piece that I just want to show you was just a combination of natural wood, texture, and then paint. Okay. I burned, yes, I did. I burned the lines first using the indexing wheel. And then you wouldn't, well, then cutting the lines in and burning the lines. But that came afterwards because I used a compass to measure from here to here, and that told me how far to make the line going across so it looked more like a square. So the distance from here across there is the same as that to that, and did that to each one of them. So you turn that one, then you measure this part, then you go down the next one like that. So, okay. Any questions? Yes. Yes, I do. And 9 times out of 10, I'll use polyurethane. I use wipe-on polyurethane. I give it a very light coat, especially if I'm using the pens. These are India ink, and they don't really run. But if you put on polyurethane with wipe-on and you rub it, you will see the color come off on the pad. So rather than take a chance of doing that, what I usually do is the first coat I will brush on very lightly. I'll brush it on, and then I'll take a paper towel and I'll damp it so to make sure that there's no runs. And then after that, the subsequent coats, then I'll wipe it on. Bless you. So even though it says it's light fast or it's non-reactive, some of the color sits on the surface and still will drag onto other parts of the wood. Okay. But to answer your question, I've used polyurethane and I've also used waterlocks. Both, I've had good luck with both of those. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right. First thing with these things, and don't ask me how I know this. The other good thing I like about this tool is there's no tools needed to change the tips. It's this right here locks it in place. So rule number 1, when you put a tip in, immediately turn it. And then do this. Make sure it doesn't pull out. You don't want to see it. It's never happened to me. What's that? Yeah, happened to a good friend. So one of the first things I do when I am making these bowls is I'll use the good old center finder that Steve has in the store for a song, and I'll just make these guidelines. And they don't have to be exact. You don't care about how far apart they are, just so I have a good frame of reference. Okay. Now we start carving. Let's see. I'm not used to doing it this high because I usually do this on my carving stand. Like I said, this is the one tip that it works great, but it's a bit scary because if you hit it this way and it goes like that, it takes off on you. So you always make sure that one, you have it anchored to the wood, your hand. It's almost like turning. Ankle bevel cut, so it's anchor, and then, and that was hard. I shouldn't have, what I usually do is go. Actually, you want it to be different depths because it adds more drama because it'll have a different type of a shadow effect. So you do want to vary the depth. Right now, just I don't have it at all the way. This is the one negative about the Master Carver. It doesn't have a gauge to tell you how many RPM you're turning. The max is 46,000. So the max is all the way down here. I usually go like right around here in the middle. I tell you the truth, I don't think I've ever gone past that. Some pieces I'll turn down to probably 20,000 RPM, especially if it's burning the wood, and I want to leave it natural. If I'm going to paint it, I don't care if it burns the wood because it's going to be covered anyway. But and that's the other thing too. I'm not going to throw it at you. Let the burr do the work. Don't try and muscle these things because either one or two things are going to happen. Either you're going to lose control of it, or it's going to damage the piece. Neither one of those things is anything you want to do. So. And to answer your question, Dominic, sometimes what I'll do is I'll purposely go down to the end and really let it dig in at the end to give it a different effect on the edge. Now, what you may notice is that I'm not going as far as that black line there because I don't want to hit this bead over here because it'll take a nick out of it. But I will use a different burr to get close to the edge. Now you notice how much artistic effect I'm expressing right now. It's not as bad as watching paint dry, but now you go back and you start filling it in. See, I just nicked it. You see the nick I just made? Who's going to ask the obvious question? How do I fix that? Design modification. Now I'm still keeping the cuts pretty far apart. The reason I do that is that it's easier to balance the piece as a whole piece if you cut all the lines in stages. If you cut it, if I just went down here and I just started cutting all the lines, it may not look uniform all the way around the whole piece. So I just do it a piece at a time. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll start going. I should say that when I'm doing this, I'm usually have my headphones on and I'm listening to music. Because this sound would drive you. What's that? That's scarier than me doing this. Now the other, here I'm just going. Yeah. But actually, Bob, I'll probably, I would go back, and I do go all the way around like I'm doing now. I'll actually go around a couple of times. Here, I'm getting to the part where I did a bunch of this before, earlier, and now I'm going to go back and I don't like having, you see these wide areas? You don't want, well, you don't, I don't want that. Because what's going to happen is once I finish doing all this, then I'm going to get some black acrylic gesso, and I'm going to paint the whole thing in black. And once it dries, then I'm going to put it back on the lathe again, and I'm going to sand off the top piece so that the natural wood is going to show on the high points, and the hollows will be black. So. See, now I'm going to just go back through here, and if I see a spot that has too much flat, I'll go back and I'll hit it. And I really butchered this bead right here. Okay, so that looks good from my perspective, except for the fact that the inside here has got too much flat space, So I want to get another bit. Okay. Now, I don't know if you got. I'm sorry? This right here? Yeah, that's a Trent Bosch carving stand. Yep. Yeah, it's the Trent Bosch will I think it comes in multiple spindle sizes. This is the the 8 TPI 1 inch and a quarter, just like the spindle on the jet lathe, um, which I have, and it's a 1 inch stock here, so it'll fit in the banjo, 1 inch banjo. Great little carving thing. Yeah, I have a carving table. Um, that's the other thing. If you do this, make sure you have a very comfortable chair. I have one of my grandsons didn't want his gaming chair, so I took his gaming chair, and it's really quite comfortable. Um, and it's actually an old Craftsman collapsible uh, vice thing that it was a table that came together that goes like this. Yeah, workmate. That's exactly. It's a workmate, and it's got a hard plastic top. Oh, and I drilled a hole in it, 1 inch hole, and this sits in that, and that's what I use for my carving. And right in front of it is I have a tall stand with a top that I have the dust collector right there, and the whole thing just sits right over there. And I have a big telescoping lamp and go to town. So, okay, so now all I'm going to do here is use this burr and can you see that good when I'm doing that, or not really? Well, I'm making my embellishment more detailed. But if you want to call embellishing the embellishment, whatever turns you on, Bruce. And the other thing is if I do this and I don't like the way it looks, or there's not enough in here, even after I put the paint on, I could do it again and then just put another coat of gesso on it and still be fine. Okay. All right. You only have to do it once and screw it up, and your wife will never let you do it again. And you know how I learned that? That's what my wife did with mowing the lawn once. That's all it is. Yeah, no, it's just a stiff brush. Um, and it's really just to get as much of that fuzz off of here as you possibly can. Okay. What's that? Tidy bowl grip. It was the cheapest one I could find at Bed Bath and Beyond. Okay. Alrighty. Now, what we can do now is I'll do this. Let me take this off here. And I'm going to put a coat of gesso on it. And we'll let that dry while we do some other stuff. And when I use gesso, gesso is really pretty thick stuff. Oh, this is, yeah, gesso. Liquitex. I get all my art stuff, the pens, the paints from Blick Art Materials, Dick Blick. They have the best prices around. You go to Michael's and the pens are like $4.50 a piece. You can get them at Blick for like, depend if they're on sale, $2.50. So it's a good deal. What I do is I also use an airbrush, but I use airbrush medium on the gesso. It thins it down a little bit, and it gets down deeper into the crevices. Normally, if I'm doing this, I would spend the time and put tape all around this. But since I'm going to probably turn it away anyway, it doesn't matter to me. So you just really just slop it on. Yes. Yeah. They do. They have some. Golden makes great airbrush paint, and they carry Golden. Um, like I said, I've shopped around. I've looked at Amazon. I've looked at all of the places, and Blick. They have the best variety of colors and stuff like that, as well as the best prices. And if you buy when I buy like pens and things like that, I usually wait until I have an order large enough that it's over. If it's over $50, the shipping's free. Okay. No, they used to. They did. Yeah, yeah. There was another one that was in Burlington. Can't remember the name. It started with a C. Coretts, right? Yeah, the Rats. Yeah, they were awesome too. They went out of business. It's a shame, but not that I know of. Oh, is there? Okay. Well, tell you the truth, I'd rather do it online. It's easier. I said I'd rather get it online. It's easier. Jerry's? No. No. Okay. Oh, really? Okay, I'll check them out too. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And what I've found, and I'm not sure if it's going to cooperate this time, is that if you use straight gesso in these crevices, invariably you get air pockets because it's that thick that it just forms air pockets, and you have to do. I mean, it's not a big deal. You have to do maybe 2 or 3 coats to get them all. Um, but what I've found that a number of people are doing, and I haven't tried it yet, is especially on when you're doing a whole piece like this, they use Black India ink as the base color, um, which I have to try. The main reason they do that is it doesn't fill crevices like acrylic paint will. Okay. All right. So that's done. So we'll just let this dry. And what we could do is, at this point, I'm really pretty much done with the lathe. All right, so just a couple of things I wanted to show you guys. Here's a piece that was obviously turned, and then I just drew lines, like curved lines. And if you really looked at them, they're not all uniform. They're all different. They're not far different, but you know, this one here is wider than this one over here, or that one. So it doesn't have to be perfect, especially in a piece like this where you're trying to come like an organic type of a feel. So here I used these kind of burrs. This is a roughing burr. Kutzall makes them Sabertooth. Both of those are really good brands. I don't bother getting. I know there's other cheaper versions out there, and Chinese versions of them. Word to the wise, you just like all the other stuff that we buy, you pay for what you get for. I mean, you get what you pay for. I bought a cheap set of Chinese diamond burrs, and they were supposed to be 1/8 of an inch shank out of a container that had 40 burrs. 20 of them don't fit 1/8 of an inch shank. So like I said, you get what you pay for. So this is a roughing burr. This is, if I remember right, this is a Sabertooth. And these are called flames, and these are the ones that I used probably the most. And when actually, you know what? Let's do this one. I'll do this piece right here. This piece right here is. I remember I said to you, this is how I formed these leaves. All this person did was they took a pencil, they went like this. Then they went like this. Is this showing up? Okay. Okay. There's a leaf, there's a leaf, there's a leaf. Okay. So now, if I wanted to go here, I'll make another leaf there. And another leaf here. Now you don't want it to look like that, so you just make it curved a bit like that, and that's really all there is to it. And now I'm going to have leaves, a leaf design. That's really all it is. So no real artistic talent there, just drawing lines. So what I'll do here is I'll take a 1/32 bit, and I ended up having to make this because I was accumulating so many burrs that I was spending more time digging through a box of burrs than I was doing any kind of carving. Okay. 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 This fan right here is actually for, it's got a carbon filter. So when I'm wood burning, it draws the smoke away and pulls it through here. I told you. Who am I more concerned about? But no, it has a filter in here, so you'll only catch the real fine particles. Let's see if this works. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do this piece here. All right. Wait, put. Oh, jeez. You know how many times I forget I have this on my head? A lot. Okay. All right. So, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to start by getting. Now this is a piece of spalted wood that didn't have much spalting in this piece, but you see how this is dark? This wood is dark. This side's darker than this side. I can tell you right now that this wood over here is half as dense as this wood, because this wood, when I was, you could see the burn marks over here. Do you see those? I'm not getting any burn marks here because this wood's so soft it's just like falling apart. And I think I mentioned this earlier, is when you're doing this, it goes back to a saying that I heard Mike Smith make a number of years ago, which was right on the button, is it's not a race. It's the journey. And you really got to take this slow. Let the burr do the work, just like you're letting the tool on the lathe do the work. And here I am, I'm just sneaking up on the edge. And right now this is just rough cutting. I'm not going to go over the edge, or I don't even come really close to it. Because right now all I want to do is hawk out wood. And if you notice, when I'm doing this, I always keep this hand anchored to the wood. Again, I'll just keep drawing the correlation to what we do in wood turning is I'm not out here. I keep my arms close to my body, and I really want to anchor myself. Another word to the wise, don't ask me how I know, but when these things are spinning, or when this thing is on, keep it away from the other hand. It will hurt a lot. Another thing that I'll do a lot, and I'm doing it right now, is I use this hand, just a finger on there, just to anchor it a little bit more. And I'm just nibbling away around here, because if I take too big of a bite, these burrs will have can very easily run away from you this way. Now I'm going to use another burr called a stump cutter. Now this guy takes a lot of wood, but it's a lot smoother to cut. The resulting, and where's that other piece? Yeah, I'm going to show you. I want to show you what it looks like, because you're not going to see it from the camera. But let me do this burr again. All right, I'm going to just to Dominic's point. I'm just going to Now, Roland, you had asked me how I did these before. I mean, it's really just the same thing as the leaves. Instead of doing a leaf, I just did shapes like that, and okay. Now what I want you to see is the difference between this burr and what it does to the wood and a stump cutter. A stump cutter will cut almost as fast as a roughing burr, but the resulting finish is dramatically different. You, you see how that one just started skating on me? This is the it's a stump cutter. Any these kind of burrs, um, the stump cutter, as well as the carbide bead cutters, they'll give you a smoother surface than one of these guys. And here I'll pass both of these around. Um, this is a rough cutter, and you can see it's very very rough. And this is a carbide cutter, and it has actually like little blades on it. So the one of these is with the rough cutter, and the other one is with a stump cutter, and you can feel the difference. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It depends on how deep you want it to go. Um, like this one, I made these probably maybe a little bit more, like 3/16 to a quarter of an inch deep, and what's that? 3/8 of an inch thick. So you can go real thin, but you don't want to make it so thin that it's so delicate that it's gonna snap on somebody, um, or like Michael said, that 6 months down the road it just cracks. If you want, you could pass this around too, and pass these around and let people look at them. Okay. So back to this piece again. Where'd I go? Oh, here they are. All right, so now I'm going to go back to these two leaves. I just want to make sure. Okay. Okay, Bruce? I'm looking out for you, buddy. Okay, now I'm just going to start cutting again, going a little bit closer to the leaf. Did you hear that noise? Okay, that's because I dug in too deep and it caught both edges. And that'll leave a rougher cut than if I did it right. I really hope that Rick does get Donna Banfield here, because she does unbelievable carving and painting on her pieces. Um, the other thing I do more often than not is I'll bring the if you look at the tip, it's going more toward me than away from me. It's easier to control. Um, less apt to go up. If I go the other way, it's the bird's turning that way, it's going to go up. So if I need to go that way, I usually do just the tip. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the tip or see how that just went up? If I go this way, it won't. But I don't put a lot of pressure on the tip. Um, I just let the bird do the job. All right. So I just did one leaf because I know this is like watching paint dry. Um, and I think you've gathered by now, this is not something for impatient people or people that want to have something done in one sitting. In all honesty, just doing this much, I mean, the turning probably took less than an hour. Just turning this, carving this many out of the leaves took about 8 hours. Um, what I'm going to use now is actually I'm going to go back to the stump cutter. What I like to do on these pieces here is undercut the edges of the leaf. It creates shadows and it gives it a bit more realism, if you will. And here again, I'm only using the tip. See, right now I'm only working on the fat part of the leaf. To answer Dominic's question, once I finish this part, then I want to go back here and I want to get to the finer parts. Um, yeah, it's first of all the walls are 1/16 of an inch high. I mean, it's really, if you look at this again, I'll pass this around. Um, it's not that high. So, and I do have to be careful that I don't go through. So I'm judging I'm okay by a hair. Am I better at using this? Um, only from the perspective of um, now you hear that difference? That's a slower speed. Um, I'm going to go to a smaller bit in a second, Bob. Um, actually the first couple of ones I did, I used a ball bit, and I found that I couldn't get um, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. I couldn't get it. I would get little digs going along the wall from the ball bit as it hit harder and softer wood. By using this bit, I was able to spread it out more, so it gave a smoother finish in there. But no, I did try that initially, and I didn't like the way it looked. And I'm going to use a ball bit now, and I'll show you. This is the ball bit. I mean, it's tiny. It's really. Is that 8:30? Jeez. All right. I'll make this quick. Um, what's that? Yeah, I mean it is. Um, see, now I'm going out for the tip. I'm sorry. Somebody had a question? Oh, okay. Now on this part of the leaf, if you see that the tip is even smaller than this burr. Okay. Also wait for the burr to come to a complete stop before you take it out. Do not ask me how I know that too. Okay, now the next bit I'm going to do is what do I do with it? Oh, here it is. What's that? Yeah, is what's called a ruby bit, and it's just a stage rougher than a diamond bit. And with this guy is how I'm going to get into this little corner right here. That's the one I was just doing? Oh, yeah, this guy right here. Okay, you see how this corner is? Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to start here where I have the indentation and come forward. If I didn't do it that way, it would skate across. Don't ask me how I know. And I'll just use it to smooth out the bottom of the leaf. I don't. Donna Benfield does. A lot of turners do that do this kind of stuff. They go to hundreds of thousands of RPM, um, and they use them mostly for piercing. Um, I don't. I haven't gone that. I haven't gone that way. They're expensive. Um, this is more than enough for me. But anyway, so that's that. I just did that one leaf, and actually, you could look at this. Uh, the last leaf. Actually, I'll mark it with a pencil. This leaf is with the ruby burr and the stump cutter, and this one was just the stump cutter, but I haven't done anything else. But you can get an idea what the walls look like. Um, let me hang on a second, Dominic. What I'll do is, yes, I will take a 400 grit or 320 grit, and I'll just go like that, just to make sure there's no nibs um, or anything like that. And you could look at the surface. There's here I burned a couple of lines, and let me show you how I do that while I got this thing here. Um, okay. Actually, very good. It is a skew pen. That's the other reason I went with Burmmaster rather than Razor Tip. I had an Optima before, and all the Optima pens fit the Burmmaster. Razor, yeah. An adapter, yeah. And that's really being lucky too, right? Yeah. Okay, that's it. That's all there is to making a leaf. No. Um, what I'll probably do with this, um, since the lines are not deep on here, I will probably airbrush this. Because airbrush is the airbrush paint is thinner. It'll take more coats to cover it, but it'll get a lot more of the fine detail. So, but here you can pass this around. Um, any other questions I can answer for anybody? Um, in all candor, you're never going to get what you put into it. It's ridiculous. Ross was with me at New London, and I had a piece that. Oh, that's what I was going to do. All right. Um, I had a piece where um, it was one of these a bigger piece than this, obviously, and it was. I thought it was a beautiful bowl, and this girl picked it up. She was like in her mid 20s, and she goes, "Whoa, this is really nice." And then she turned it over, and and it was $170. It was a 12-inch bowl, and oh my God, that's $170. Who the hell's gonna buy a frickin' bowl for $170? And I just looked at her and I was like, "You gotta be shitting me." So yeah, yeah, that's right, exactly right. You don't know. Um, if I was a production turner, I'd probably be upset by it, but I'm not. It's a hobby for me. A lot. If it's really a nice bowl, in all honesty, and I really do a nice piece, um, it never makes that in my house. My wife goes, "Oh, I like that. I'm keeping it." So, and I give it away to family, but the really big pieces, I don't sell them. I have one that I'll bring it.